Live from the Big Tomato, this is KingsPod 2020 with your hosts, Jeff and Toke. What's up, Jeff?
What's going on, Toke? Happy to be back with you here.
Been a few months. We'll try to do this a little more regularly, but to be honest, not a lot that's actually relevant to basketball has happened in the last 3 months. I guess you could say a lot of drama and other nonsense has been occurring in Kingsland. But what's new? It's been about 20 years of this BS. So why not another 20 years? So let's see. I think that the number one thing we should probably start with is the Sacramento Kings draft. And then we could get into the Kuminga stuff. But
yeah,
what are your thoughts on the draft?
To be honest with you, I mean, I think we did as best as we could out of the draft. Nick Clifford doesn't excite me nearly as much as Maxime Renaud does. I think he actually has a better upside or a better ceiling than Nick does. I saw Nick play a couple times in college when he was playing against St. Mary's and in the tournament. And again, I mean, he's good. He was clearly one of the better players on Colorado State, but that's not saying a whole lot. I think that the high IQ of Maxime could obviously take us a little further, and I think he could add more value more quickly. Frankly, just the length and the athleticism and being able to hit the three, I think is going to be a big move off the bench for us. So I got higher hopes for him than Nick. What about you?
Is Colorado State, is that Coach Prime? Or is he Colorado?
No, that's Colorado.
What's with all these schools, or what's with all these states? Like, we have to have like a school that's just the state name, but then we have to have a school that's the state name, state. Colorado State. Like, it's
I mean, so listen, I could be wrong about this, but I think those are all public versus private. So all the state schools are the public schools. So
there's too many schools. That's my thesis. But back to the basketball. So I think that Maxime, I mean, that's great value for a 40-something pick. Even if he doesn't work out, like, that's the type of player you want to take with a pick like that. It's kind of high upside. The way that I look at it, I think that Maxime Renaud, he's got a higher ceiling than Nick. And he's probably got a higher floor as well. I think the difference, though, is Nick's going to contribute immediately. He's got a lot of good intangibles, but he's also got a lot of good tangible skills. I mean, he's athletic. He's a good defender. He can handle the rock a little. Right. I think that he's someone who's going to be a rotation guy on day one. Maxime, still unclear, but, I mean, they don't make a lot of 7-footers. And 7-footers who move well like that. He's a little soft. He's got a lot of things that he needs to work on. He needs to get some of that grown man strength, but he's only 19 years old, I believe. So look, you traded a pick. You traded the Spurs pick in 27 to get to Oklahoma City to get the number 24 pick this year, which is, like, late first round pick. You're really hoping that you get a rotation player. You never know, but I mean, a big thesis of mine is, like, you got to view draft picks as shots rather than like the Carmichael Dave method of, like, penciling in what the average 24th pick has. Like, that's not, you either get a player or you don't. That's how you have to look at it. So,
right.
Yeah, I mean, this team is old. There's not really a lot of room for them to get better organically with their current roster. Keegan Murray's really the only young player with any type of upside that you have on the roster going into the draft. Getting a guy who I believe was a senior in Nick Clifford, again, he's going to be closer to his ceiling than a 19-year-old, but That's fine. You'd rather have a 22-year-old than a 29-year-old who's making
Sure.
$40 million or whatever Zach LaVine's making. I think Zach LaVine's like 32, but whatever. I mean, look, man, Scott Perry's off to an interesting start. He was dealt a really, really, really bad hand by the previous regime. His first move was to hire Vivek Ranadive's friend, Doug Christie.
Right.
But, since then, I think he's done the best that could be expected. I mean, trading the Spurs 27 pick 2 years from now, which who knows what's going to be going on in the world 2 years from now, to get a young man who can come in right away and probably get rotation minutes. That's a good pickup. Maxime is exactly the type of shot you want to take in the early 40s. So, yeah, I mean, I think the draft was good. I give it a B+.
Yeah, I mean, I think with these things, it just remains to be seen. Again, Scott Perry played the cards he was dealt, and that's great. So it really just remains to be seen how it all plays out. Back to the Doug Christie hire real quick. I know we kind of beat it to death when it happened, but throughout the summer, I've had a bunch of conversations with folks who, have been Kings fans their whole life, right? We grew up in Sacramento. All of us are Kings fans, and everyone essentially has the same takeaway, which is, obviously we all hope that Doug Christie does well, but should you have gone out and found somebody who was a real coach, and would Doug Christie have ever gotten a job anywhere else as a head coach? Probably not. So, we wish him the best, but it remains to be seen if he can put it together for a full season and a full contract.
So I thought about this the other day, and I was really thinking, like, okay, the dust is settled. It's been a few months. Like, what do I actually think about Doug Christie? And here's where I landed at. I think Doug knows basketball. I think Doug is a smart guy. I think Doug showed on the court he was a smart player. I think that that's going to translate into coaching. And clearly, it seems like he has good relationships with the players, and that gets buy-in. I think that the number one problem that I have with the hire is that when you're looking at this roster and you're looking at, like, realistically what you have, what is there to fall back on when the team starts losing? Because Doug Christie is like, he's going to be a very methodical, detail-oriented, like defense first attitude, but whatever. He's going to want to move the ball and shoot a lot of threes. But this team, as it's constructed, is not a 50-win team. This team is somewhere probably in the 33 to 43 win range, I think. Just, from top to bottom, if you look at the roster.
Yep.
So what happens when you have that 4-game losing streak? Like, if you have a Jeff Van Gundy, who I would have thrown a ton of money at as a coach, or, pick your I mean, really any of the other accomplished coaches that were available.
Big name available coaches.
Right? At least in that situation, you have a track record of success so that, even if in year one, because you have a crappy roster, you're losing, you're building towards something bigger. With Doug, I think it's going to be a lot easier to tune him out. And I think a lot of players will tune him out the first time they have a 4-game losing streak. And believe me, that is going to happen probably in the first half of the season.
Oh, of course. But I guess the question is, do you think Scott Perry's approaching this season with a win now mindset? I mean, I'm sure Vivek is telling him, we got to win now. This is a good team. But do you think Scott Perry is approaching it that way? Because it wouldn't surprise me at all if Scott Perry's playing the long game and he's saying, okay, well, we don't have a good team anyways, so we'll let Doug take the helm for a year or two, see how it goes. If it goes poorly, then he can put his own people in there while he reshapes the roster a bit. It can be kind of one of those, another one of those interim periods for the Kings where we just go through basketball hell. But hopefully Perry has some sort of grand design. Because again, I just can't imagine he's approaching this season thinking we're looking good to compete for the playoffs and things are going to be on the right track.
Okay.
Off the bat.
I think what you want to be doing is you want to be building something for the future. And if Doug Christie gets tuned out by the players, which I predict will happen when they have a long losing streak, which I also predict is going to happen probably in the first 30 games of the season, what are you building on? Like, what exactly are you building on? Right? Like,
well, yeah. I mean, I think the idea is that most of these players aren't going to be here anyways. So that's what I mean when I say I think it's kind of an interim, aka throwaway year, and maybe throwaway couple of years, because Doug's not the way this roster is constructed, that we have to get rid of people. We have to move on from people, whatever that looks like. However we get that done, you don't want to build on this roster. So you go through those hard times and you go through the losing streaks, which I totally agree we're going to go through, and it's going to be a disaster. But I don't see Scott Perry thinking any different than that.
So I want to briefly bring in a Twitter argument I got into with Carmichael Dave over the summer. So his argument, just to try to be charitable and steelman it, is something along the lines of, you're not going to be good anyways, so you might as well just like run out the young guns, get rid of Zach LaVine, get rid of DeMar DeRozan, get rid of Sabonis, and just like throw Nick Clifford and Maxime out there. It's going to A, give them more playing time, and B, help you get a better draft spot, because you're obviously going to lose more games if you're not playing DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine and Sabonis.
Sure.
To which point I strongly disagreed with that. I think if you look at a person like Maxime or Nick or Devon Carter, God forbid, or Keegan, like, you want to put these guys in a position to succeed. And if those guys are starting and playing heavy minutes and they're playing against the other team's best players, they're not going to succeed. And when they don't succeed, then you have a psychological element that plays up. And then you have the other element of losing games also makes them okay with losing. This is the De'Aaron Fox problem, right? Like,
right. Yep.
Okay. So actually, my contention where I would depart radically from the Carmichael Dave faction is no, it's actually better to win 40 games than win 30 games. Because even though you're getting the 9th pick instead of the 5th or 6th pick, this is kind of the argument that I got into with him. There's still going to be a good player on the board. Really, the problem that the Kings have had is the Kings have never had the top pick. And one year they had the 2nd pick and they screwed that up. But that's like all these years that the Kings have been bad, 40 years in Sacramento, they've gotten the number 1 pick one time, and that was in 1989, I believe, and they got Purvis Ellison. And since then, they've had the worst record in the NBA a couple times, never got the number 1 pick. The Blake Griffin year should have been us. But you know what? Okay, we didn't get the number 1 pick. We had the 4th pick that year. We drafted Tyreke Evans. You know who was on the board? Steph Curry. Like, at the end of the day, the team that you're integrating a young player into matters. Bringing DeMarcus Cousins into this team, bringing Tyreke Evans into this team, bringing De'Aaron Fox into this team really stifled their careers. And I think on the flip side, when you look at a player like Gerald Wallace, you look at a player like Kevin Martin, you look at a player even like Hedo Turkoglu. I think Hedo was like in the teens, but regardless, he was out of the lottery, I'm pretty sure. All these players, they were brought in and they were plugged into a team that was at least competitive and in the playoffs. And so you have Kevin Martin coming off the bench and giving you 12 minutes a game, his rookie season or whatever it was. I don't have the stats in front of me.
Sure.
And that helped him. And he won a lot of games coming off the bench as a rookie because the Kings were good when he was a rookie. And that helped him later on in his career when he thought of himself and when he thought of his ability, because he had those early successes on a team that was winning, to think of himself as a winner. On the flip side, you have DeMarcus Cousins or someone like that who puts up all the stats and they lose.
Right.
So I'm very strongly in the category of do not tank, try to win as many games as you can, and the draft will work itself out. I think in the All-Star game last year, out of the 24, 26 players or whatever, like literally half of the all-stars were picked outside of the top 10 or outside of the lottery. I don't remember. I think like
we talked about this last time.
We talked like there's always going to be a star on the board. And that's why I think you need to shift your focus from like, oh, the 12th pick is slated to average X, Y, and Z, and shift it to this is a shot. You're taking a shot at drafting a player who's going to either be a rotation piece or a star. And don't look at them as like, well, this guy's going to average 7 points a game because that's what the average is. No, you're not drafting the average. You're drafting a flesh and blood human being in this position, and they're going to sink or swim based on their own individual abilities, irrespective of where they're actually drafted.
Right. So I guess again, my question comes back to when you bring in like a Nick Clifford, for example. So Nick Clifford has not been used to winning all the time, right? Again, he went to Colorado State. He wasn't like De'Aaron Fox going to Kentucky or Cousins going to Kentucky, where like they've won championship after championship, and now they're on the Kings, who are terrible. So do you think when you bring in Nick Clifford and they win 38 games, but he gets those kind of minutes off the bench, do you think that's going to be more beneficial for him? Even though as the NBA goes, 38 wins is not a good season.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the difference between like a 38 win season and like a 29 win season or whatever makes a huge difference for a guy like that?
Yeah, I do.
Because as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I actually agree with what you're saying that. It's hard to be a winner your entire life and then come get stomped your first year with an organization. And so I actually agree that, you bring somebody like Nick Clifford in, who's not used to winning everything, and he's more used to the grind. And so that actually kind of lends itself to what Sacramento does, which is just grind. But I'm not sure that from his psyche standpoint, it makes that much of a difference. And if you can get a better draft pick, again, you got to deal with it next year when you get the good draft pick. Let's say you got the fourth pick, that person is probably used to winning a lot, and so you're back in that same spot. But when you think about just the draft that we just had, it's like I don't know. So like, so much of a difference.
Like I said at the end of the regular season, I'm not a tank person strategically, but I am tactically. I think they should have tactically tanked the last 15 games of the season to secure keeping their pick.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
But I think that when you have all your draft picks, which at the moment the Kings currently do have all their draft picks for the next 7 years, I believe. I think there's like a pick swap somewhere in the future with the Spurs, which was, another cluster with the DeMar DeRozan sign and trade. I think you just got to let the draft worry, not worry about it in terms of, are we getting the 6th pick versus the 9th pick or whatever it's going to be. I do think it's a big difference between being a 38-win team and a 28-win team for the psyche of a young player. And, I just want to say something else, that it's so weird to me that like the way that NBA fans and just kind of the NBA media, I mean, sports journalism generally is like the lowest IQ journalism you can find. It's just, I have almost zero respect for anyone who works in sports media. And I know some of these folks, and I would, laughingly tell them this to their face, but like all of a sudden the Philadelphia 76ers 12 years ago or 13 years ago or whenever it was started with, I think it was Sam Hinkie in the process. And it's like, we need to just tank. And like somehow, like by tanking, it's kind of indicative of this loser's mentality that I've kind of been talking about since the origin of this podcast, which is like somehow you're turning losing into winning because you're promising yourself that somehow by losing today, this will help us win down the road at some point. And I'm just sacrificing the present for the future.
I mean, that is how the draft is supposed to work. It doesn't ever work that way for the Kings, but that is how it's supposed to work.
Okay, well, let's look at Philadelphia. What do they have to show for all those years of tanking?
Didn't they made it back to the Eastern Conference Finals, didn't they?
I don't think they made it out of the second round, but regardless, it took them all those years of tanking they had Ben Simmons, they had Markelle Fultz, they had all these other guys.
Right.
And they got Joel Embiid, who's like, an MVP. He's an elite talent, but look at his career. He didn't play much the first like 2 or 3 years. If you were to
but I think if you told Kings fans right now, let's just say they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Okay. I think they did, but I could be wrong. Let's just say if you told Kings fans right now, from today, we're gonna tank today, and let's say it takes 8 years, but in 8 years we're gonna be in the Western Conference Finals. I think Kings fans would sign up for that journey in a heartbeat.
Well, this isn't a democracy.
Because at least it's like a path.
I really don't care. I really don't care what Kings fans want. Like, my goal is, for an outcome that's successful, and that would be like the Kings actually winning a championship one day. And I don't think you get to that championship any quicker by losing today. Because if you look at it, the Kings have never, quote unquote, actually like done a full tear down, rebuild, tank.
Right.
And we still could have drafted Damian Lillard, Steph Curry. Like, I mean, I could go, I don't think I need to.
But then you look at OKC and it's like, well, they did it.
OKC did not do that. OKC had Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who was an 11th pick, by the way. So another player the Kings could have drafted, FYI.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And who did they take that year? Anyway, whatever. I think that was the Luka year, I think. Okay. So you have a player like that you traded. Excuse me. I'm reversing this. You have Paul George. That's how you got Shai, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And you traded Russell Westbrook and you traded Paul George, who was an MVP level candidate. Not, he was like 4th or 5th in voting, but he was one of the best 10 players in the NBA at the time you made this trade. And Russ was a 2-time MVP, if I'm not mistaken. So You traded a 2-time MVP and another MVP candidate for Shai,
mm-hmm.
and then a bunch of draft picks. But let's be clear, Shai was not a draft pick. He was a guy coming off his rookie season who showed some promise. Now, no one thought he was going to be as good as he ended up being. But you didn't tank. You traded.
I was going to say, I mean, the result is the same. The result is more losing, but I understand your point. So they to counter your point, they did intentionally plan on losing more games in order to win more games later.
No, they didn't, though, because after that, they went out and they, I believe they traded for Chris Paul, and Chris Paul almost got them to the playoffs. Like, they were trying to win games. It just worked out that they were not a very good team for several years until they became a great team.
That's what I mean. They traded away the players that made them a good team.
But they were still trying to win. They weren't doing the Philadelphia tank thing.
That's fair. They never explicitly said we're trying to tank. They just intentionally made themselves worse. So that,
and again,
the results are the same.
If you could take a step back to get a young prospect like Shai, which again, you could get if you have MVP level players, like, yeah, sure. The Clippers will trade you a young prospect who may or may not work out for a guy who's a proven commodity, right? Like, that can happen, but you don't have that guy on the roster. What you do have is you have a very good shooting guard. You have a good, we'll call him second shooting guard in DeMar DeRozan. I mean, he's playing small forward, but he's a guard. And you have a solid big man like Sabonis, who's probably best cast as a number 3 or number 4 on a team, but he's like the second best player on the team right now, or the best player on the team right now, however you want to do it.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, Malik Monk. Keegan, like, I'm not very bullish on, but I mean, I guess he's still, a valuable piece. Keon Ellis is whatever. Like, I think he's grossly overrated by Kings fans, but he's a nice rotation player. You don't have a star. You don't have anyone who's going to make an all-star team. Like,
no. And I think at the end of the day, we tried to move from a lot of folks this summer, and there were no takers. Even the guy that I thought would be able to be moved relatively easily in Malik Monk, there's just no takers for him. So even if we wanted to trade away, our best players, quote unquote, it's like, are the returns just not going to be there? So you can't get that same Shai Gilgeous-Alexander return and then go in and get those picks like you're going to pick up with with the kid from Gonzaga on their team. I'm forgetting his name right now. Chet. You're like the stars lined up there because they got rid of those two players, Westbrook and Paul George. We don't have those guys to get rid of, and we've tried to get rid of everyone else, and nobody wants them, so we're kind of stuck where we are.
Yeah, the NBA is a very weird place in that it is a copycat league. That's a cliche that you hear thrown around, but it's so true. It's like one day someone woke up and decided, you know what, the aprons matter, the salary cap matters, the luxury tax matters, and everyone's going to be very tight with their money. And that's what happened this summer. And it's like, I don't know, when everyone's being tight with their money, maybe it's the time to be the team that says, you know what, screw it, let's go into the luxury tax, because everyone else is being cheap and you could pick up a good player that otherwise you couldn't. And vice versa. When everyone's spending very freely, like for the last decade in the NBA, every player who's, eligible for an extension got a max extension, whether they dollar for dollar were worth it or not. And now you're kind of seeing an overcorrection the other way, I think. But yeah, I mean, it's a copycat league and everyone has decided, one day everyone woke up and decided because the Warriors won a championship that we just need to turn it into a jump shooting contest.
And that's launch threes.
That's been the NBA now for the last 10 years. Now everyone's decided, you know what? We're not just going to give max contracts anymore to prospects. You got to actually prove it, unless you're De'Aaron Fox, but that's another story. And I will continue taking cheap shots at him. I don't care.
I was going to say, we couldn't do a podcast without it.
So what do you think about the Kings' pursuit and failure to secure Jonathan Kuminga?
I honestly, I kind of feel that it wouldn't have made much of a difference for this season anyways. I think he's a good player. I like him as a player, but the problem is we're going to try to bring him in and we're going to try to ask him to be our number 2 guy. And I don't think he's a number 2 guy. So I think we're putting, as Kings fans, we tend to do this. We put huge value on some of these guys that it just aren't the guy.
Yeah.
And so that's how I feel about Kuminga. Again, do I want him on the team? Of course. I think it'd be great to have him on the team. Like, certainly he would add value to our team. But in terms of wins this season, I don't think we're taking a major leap by adding him.
Well, he's a swing, right? He's a shot.
I think he's a pretty known commodity, to be honest with you. I think he's pretty known.
So
I don't think he's going to take
I think we know
a huge
a lot.
Jump.
I think we know a lot about him, but I don't think he's a totally known commodity, because I think that if you look in San Francisco, what they're doing over there, they're a very big system-oriented team, and he doesn't fit the system. Like, that's kind of the ultimate problem with Jonathan Kuminga, is that team is a ball movement, set screens, make Steph's life easier system.
Right.
And everything revolves around that. This is why Draymond Green is considered a good player. Draymond Green on any other team in the NBA is an afterthought.
I totally agree with that.
The triple single machine, as Charles Barkley likes to say. Well, Kuminga is kind of like the inverse of Draymond. He's just, I don't know. He's a very athletic, kind of iso ball type of player. I think that when you look at a player like that with that athleticism, and I mean, he always lights the Kings up, it feels like, whenever he gets on the court against us, because the Kings don't have what he has, which is athleticism, length. Yep. The Kings just don't have anyone like him. I think what was so attractive to me about going for him is, at a minimum, you now have 2 forwards that are actually forwards in your starting lineup, and you can move DeRozan either to the bench or you trade him, one or the other. Probably you trade him, right? And then you can move Keegan down to the 3, which is, I think, his natural position. And you're taking a low risk, high reward shot at a player that I think has like a 25 to 30% chance of being a star. Now, that means he has a 70% chance of not being a star, but it's like, again, we're going back to what I was saying about the draft. Just look at this as another draft pick. It's like you're taking a shot at a player who might be a star. Like, that's
from that perspective, I don't disagree. And from what I recall, it fell apart because they wanted more draft picks than we were willing to give, or we wanted to put protections on or something like that.
So here we go for all our listeners. We're going to go back to the De'Aaron Fox trade. Okay. I'm taking my sweater off for this one because I'm getting heated just thinking about it. The Warriors showed you, I'm going to try not to cuss, but the Warriors basically showed you how winners operate. They had just enough leverage in the situation to not lose a player for nothing. So they stubbornly held out until the 11th hour. They made a list of demands to the Kings that was frankly probably too high of a price tag given their situation. And they got the player to wilt and sign the extension and take the money. And now they can trade him. And I don't know what all the stipulations are as far as whether or not he has a no trade clause. I'm sure that's been reported. I really don't care. He's not coming to the Kings, so I really don't care. You have a player now that, because they didn't wilt under pressure, the player wilted under pressure, they're now back in the driver's seat, and they can extract more value for him. And if he plays well, great. And if he doesn't play well, they didn't lose anything by holding out. Now, compare that to what the Kings did with Fox, which the Kings had way more leverage in the Fox situation because the Kings had a literal contract.
We could have spent all summer shopping Fox.
Yes. We could have said,
Rich Paul, Fox with all sorts of other stuff. I mean, it's too much.
You know, the Kings literally could have said, all right, Fox wants to go to the Spurs. Okay. What are the Spurs offering? Okay. If literally any of the other 29 teams offer us what the Spurs are offering, we will send you to that team. Like, the Spurs have to give us more than any other team. Like,
right.
Again, this is very basic negotiations. I just helped my fiance buy a car back in August. Okay.
Right.
And in those conversations, in those negotiations, I was talking to more than one dealership. Even if one of the dealerships had the exact car that I wanted, I used another dealership in their inventory as leverage. And this was part of the negotiation. And I extracted more value for the dollar in what we got for my fiance than I would have if I just walked in the dealership and said, okay, I want this car. Let's talk. Boom. The Kings are
she would have put them in the driver's seat if she would have been like, I love this car. I can't live without it. Exactly. I have to have this car. And which is exactly what Fox did and exactly what the Spurs did. And somehow it got flipped around to where they used that against us. Like they forced the issue on us instead of us being like, oh, you want something? Now we can extract more value out of it.
And by the way, I'm just going to say this. It really looks bad now because the Spurs got the second pick. They drafted Ron Harper's kid. I think his name's Dylan. Do you recall? Whatever. He's a guard.
I recall that the second pick, but I don't recall.
Okay, so you got that. You got Stephon Castle. Like, do the Spurs even do this deal today, knowing you have Castle, who's the rookie of the year, and you just took with the second pick, another point guard? Right. So actually,
honestly,
maybe they
probably do because
you know what? Maybe you can extract from the Spurs one of those two guys.
Right.
So, in like the one thing you don't do is what the Kings did. It was like literally the worst. So, I mean, again, compare that with what happened with Kuminga. The Kings saw an opportunity. They made a low ball offer, just like the Spurs made a low ball offer. But the Warriors are like, no, we're not taking an L, and we're not taking an L to our
crosstown rivals.
Geographical opponents, or I'm not going to say rival because we've never both been good at the same time. And I don't view the Warriors as a rival. I view the Lakers as much more of like a heated thing because that's just actually a thing. We were actually competing for championships with the Lakers at one point. We've never, the Warriors were an afterthought when the Kings were good, and the Kings have been an afterthought since the Warriors got good. So, yeah, anyway, I mean, the Kuminga thing, I think it's instructive of how a franchise that wins operates versus the Fox being emblematic of a losing franchise operating. I think Scott Perry did well by.
My understanding is that I know he signed, but there's still some talk of a trade happening mid-season.
The Warriors are a little bit in a little bit of a better position though from that standpoint. Because now
they have the control at least.
they don't need to consider where Jonathan Kuminga wants to go, whereas they did up until this point.
Right.
So anyway,
that's the other part. That is the other part that we need to consider as the Kings organization is, if he really wanted to come to Sacramento, you should have tried to pick him up as hard as you possibly could. Because that in and of itself is a rarity that folks really want to come here.
Yeah.
And so that's got to play into the thought process.
But let's also kind of break this down. Why did he want to come here?
Probably because there's a great opportunity for him to freewheel it here, right? Again, it's not like we have a great team and a great system set up. He can become more of a focal point of our system, and he can, to your point, maybe try to reach a higher ceiling than what he's been at so far.
So if I'm hearing what you're saying correctly, players would be willing to come here if they agreed with the vision and the direction that the team was selling.
Mid-tier players, yeah.
Okay.
I don't think every player wants to do that, but I think mid-tier players would be interested in it.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
players that are looking for an opportunity, players that are looking for, something to build their career on.
I mean, look, dude.
Again, I don't think Jonathan Kuminga is looking at the Kings thinking, if I go over there, we could probably win a championship in the next 3 years. I don't think that was the thought process.
If he's delusional enough in his self-belief, he might think something like that. But look, I think when you look at the teams that have won championships recently, you have Milwaukee, you have Denver, you have Indiana was in the finals, you have OKC. Like, none of these places are like Miami or LA, right? And these guys, they sign players. So I think Sacramento needs to get out of its own way and thinking of course we don't deserve good things. No, we deserve better things in all these places as far as I'm concerned.
Listen, I don't think it's a Sacramento problem. I don't think it's the town problem. I mean, everyone that comes here loves it. It's an organization problem.
Right. But I think that when you read what a lot of Kings fans think, they're like, oh, we could never sign X, Y, and Z. And it's like, well, yeah, when you suck, you can't. But if the Kings are good, I don't think it would be a problem.
Yeah, of course. If we're good, we're gonna sign people. If we're a place where we have a great culture and we got a team that's on the come up, then yeah, we're gonna sign some people. Again, I think if we had the Beam Team 1 and we can continue to build on that, then it would be a place that people wanted to come because it was getting exciting. The culture seemed like it was turning around. Everything was going great. And so it's not about the town. It's not about, oh my God, Sacramento's a cow town, because that's changed. But when the organization is so dysfunctional, that's the part that people don't want to deal with. And so you get players like Jonathan Kuminga, who's like, I'm still young and they're going to pay me a boatload of money and I'm going to be able to go in there and freewheel a little bit. Those are the people that we attract. And again, I would have loved to have him on the team. And I think we should have done everything we could to get him on the team. But I think he's a known commodity, and he's not the kind of player that's going to change our fortune. Maybe a couple of hims would, maybe a couple of players like that. You can start building something, but just him, I don't think it's going to make a difference.
Okay. I got two more topics I would like to discuss. We could do this in whichever order you want. I think the one that makes the most sense immediately would be what's going on with Devon Carter, and what are your thoughts on his prospects and where we see him in the big picture of this franchise?
At this point, my understanding is that he's going to be backup point guard to Dennis Schröder.
Oh boy!
And yeah, I mean, and I think he's got to show us something. I'm certainly not impressed with him so far. And but in fairness, I believe this is his first full summer with the Kings, correct?
Yeah, I mean, he was injured last year, which, again, why did they draft him?
Right. But regardless of that, this is his first full training camp. This is his first full season with the Kings. So granted, I was not impressed with him at all last year, but I do think we got to give him a little bit more leeway and see how it turns out. I do kind of like the smaller team in terms of college point guards. I think they come to bring something a little different to the table. So, I like what he could turn into if he can learn some stuff from Dennis Schröder, I guess. But he's got to make some serious leaps this year for it to materialize into anything. Because I really don't think you see a whole lot of people after year 2 materializing much further if they're not going to be like real good.
Yeah, I don't see the upside. I don't like when I look at him, I see a guy who's good enough to be an NBA player. I just don't see a guy who's like a serious contributor to like a winning team. Like maybe I'm missing something. I think his defense is pretty good. I think he's got that hustle. He gets the rebounds. Like he's a nice little player you could come and bring off the bench to create some chaos.
And he had a couple games. Maybe it was just one game that stands out. But I can remember a couple times that I was like, okay, this guy is coming in strong, and he's coming in trying to win on the hustle plays and that kind of stuff. And I think he's got to keep doing all that stuff. He can spark things every once in a while, but he can also kind of kill things. So he's just got to have more of that spark.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not that optimistic on him, but yeah. So
I don't think anyone's interested in trading for him. So
yeah, he might be like a sweet. Like okay, like we'll take him. Like we'll take a flyer on him, and we'll see. Maybe he could be a defender off the bench or something. But yeah, I don't think anyone views him as like a starting caliber player anywhere down the road.
Right. So let me ask you this: you think we should have brought in Westbrook? Or do you think we still should bring in Westbrook as that kind of backup role and push Devon Carter off even further? Or would you prefer to see him at least get some minutes to see if we can turn him into something?
I mean, look, there's something to be said about seeing Russell Westbrook in a Kings uniform. That would be kind of cool. Like, I'm just going to be real.
I'm past that.
I'm past that too. I'm acknowledging
past all that stuff.
I'm just acknowledging
that's such a Kings thing.
Like seeing Vince Carter in a Kings uniform is kind of
I was just thinking, I'm like, that's Vince Carter, dude. It wasn't even that cool. I'm like,
it wasn't
like
that
I can imagine
cool,
what this would have looked like, 20 years ago, but now I'm like, okay, it doesn't do anything for me.
Nah, man, like, look, I think that Russ is still an NBA player, and I think that, in a pinch, if you needed him, he could give you some minutes. But I mean, he's not better than Malik Monk. So, and that's kind of like
he would be a locker room add or subtract if he was in the trenches with us, like if we brought him on for the full season.
I mean, did he really add anything to the Lakers, the Clippers, or the Nuggets? If anything, I think that part of the reason Mike Malone had friction with some of the players was because he was favoring Russ over some of the other guys on the team. I mean, in my opinion, if he embraced that role, yeah, but if he just doesn't seem like the type of, like, he was always very angry when people would say De'Aaron Fox is the fastest point guard in the league,
Right.
It's like, dude, be cool. You're the MVP, and this guy's like a rookie. Like,
right.
Like, be competitive, but yeah, he's fast. Like, I don't know. I think if someone was playing over him, he'd be a competitor and maybe not a mentor. That's kind of my read.
Well, you know what? Maybe we need a little competition in the locker room. You get someone like Russ with a chip on his shoulder with everything he's done in the past. He's got to back up Dennis Schroeder or even worse.
If the Kings are
Carter, it's like maybe that would light a fire under everybody.
If the Kings are in a position where they're depleted from injuries, I'm good with them signing him. But I think as things currently stand, there's really not a lot to gain.
Right.
All right. So the Sacramento Kings G League team, the Stockton Kings, had a former executive having a relationship with a player.
Who was that executive, by the way? I forget.
Angeli?
It sounds familiar.
Run a dive.
Yep, that's it.
All right, what do you got to say on this?
I mean, it just goes back towards that dysfunction, man. Again, why on earth was she the GM of the Stockton Kings to begin with? God only knows. And then just the fact that she didn't even get let go from the job. She stepped down to, go back to school or something. It's like, this is just what happens when you have a dad who is rich beyond belief, and social norms just kind of go out the window. So she goes in totally unqualified for this job, sparks up a relationship with
several players.
See, I only knew about one player.
Well, Jeremy Lamb.
Oh, of course. I thought we were talking current players on the team.
Mm-hmm.
And so she sparks up a relationship with this player, which in and of itself is obviously not good. And there was reports of her favoring him and trying to convince people to do special things for him and all this stuff. And then, of course, this player ends up kidnapping and murdering somebody. And so it's like it's just a waterfall of bad decisions. And it just goes back to show, when your daddy is the owner of the company and there's no consequences for any of your moves, you think these things are normal. You think that the way that you guys are operating is normal, and then when things get weird, you just step away to go back to school. It's like it couldn't be more typical.
So poor decision makers make poor decisions.
That's it.
And that applies to pretty much everyone in this situation, from Vivek to Angeli to the player, Comanche or whatever his name is. A lot of poor decisions. And I mean, I think this it's not exactly related to basketball, but it kind of is in line with a lot of the other themes that we're discussing, it's
related to the dysfunction.
It's like, look, man, I don't know if the GM of the Stockton Kings makes any difference to the success of the parent club in any meaningful way. But on the off chance that it's a 5% contribution to maybe developing talent, why are you putting someone in that position who has no business in that position, who then is going to have romantic relationships with the players? Like, that's just, a failure on so many different levels. That
it's the literal representation of dysfunction permeating throughout an organization.
Yeah,
it's like you can see it with your own eyes. It's like it made it down to the G League team, for God's sakes. Usually those things are totally separate, but you made it down to the G League team.
So I don't know, man. It's salacious. It's tabloid level gossip. And it's all real. No one's denying it.
Of course not.
So,
yeah, I mean, the New York Times was the ones that reported it originally, is my understanding. It's like, well, give me a break.
They've got a lot of misses on their record.
That's a good point.
No one's denying this one.
Let me ask you this on a different subject, but before we close it up here, when Scott Perry and his team, I'm not including Ron Adive in that group, when they sit down and talk about what success looks like for this season, what do you think their number is in terms of wins?
I think Vivek is okay. We're not talking about Vivek. That's kind of the way you couch the question.
These are the private conversations that they're having amongst themselves. Like, okay, this is reasonably what this team should be capable of.
I think
they're not trying to sell themselves to Vivek anymore.
So I did see my source that I mentioned back in February or March recently, and we didn't talk about the Kings at all. So I have no insight to share on that. But if I'm just guessing, I would guess 500 is the number. Like they'll be happy with a 500 season, and to be honest, I'd be happy with a 500 season. Like it puts you.
I think that's a big ask, to be totally honest with you.
Well, they won 40 last year. when they fired a coach midseason and they traded their star player midseason.
Right.
So, I mean, you have a little more structure. You've got an entire offseason for Christie to build a coaching staff, and the players know each other a little better than they did immediately after these trades. I think, like I said, their range is between 33 and 43 wins. So 41 is at the higher end of that, but I think it's certainly possible, especially if they get a little help on injuries throughout the course of the year.
Yeah. Yeah, I got them at about the 38 mark.
Yeah,
that's what I would guess.
I'll take the over. I'll take the 39.
Bold.
But no, I probably think they fall short of 500, but I think they're right there. Because, I mean, look, they do have good NBA players. Like, say whatever you want.
Yeah, it's just a matter of can they put it together.
De'Aaron Fox is DeMar DeRozan is an above-average NBA player. He's old.
Yes.
Maybe he falls off, but he's like, if you're looking at the average player in the NBA, I'd put him on the upside of that. Zach LaVine clearly is an above-average NBA player. Domantas Sabonis is clearly, I think, an above-average NBA player. I think definitely. Keegan's average. I think Schröder's average. So your starting lineup is average to above average. Your bench sucks. Right. You got Malik Monk, and if he doesn't have it going, you got nothing off the bench. Newsflash.
So have they moved Malik back to the bench officially?
Oh yeah,
because last year this was like
who's he going to start over?
It was our big experiment.
Yeah, and it didn't work.
I agree. I just didn't know if that was. I don't know if he was aware that it didn't work.
I mean, we found out he's not a point guard. I mean, he can handle the ball. So, like, in a backup situation, sure. But, like, to be your starting point guard, no. He's not going to start over Schröder. He's certainly not starting over LaVine or DeRozan. So I think clearly he's back to your sixth man.
Yep. Which I think he's a role that he shines in. So,
he might be the best sixth man in the NBA.
Right.
Which is a nice thing to have on your team when you're like a playoff team, but it's kind of a luxury you don't need when you're in the Kings situation.
Right.
So,
yep, I agree.
I mean, you'd be better off having two solid backups than one Malik Monk if you could somehow swing that. But I don't know how you swing that because everyone in the NBA has decided we don't want to spend money anymore because his contract's very fair, I think, in the modern NBA. But
yeah, for a six man like him, yeah, absolutely.
All right, man.
I think it's important to note that October and early November are some of the best times to be a Kings fan. I know we haven't been so excited on this podcast specifically, but October and early November are the only time that Kings fans can get excited recently. So I think we got to ride that into the season.
Look, we've seen enough 28-win, 23-win seasons that, like, sadly, I'm actually kind of happy that we're talking about a 500 team or potentially a 500 team. And I don't think dropping 10 wins is going to be really the answer to anything. I think a team that loses in the play-in every year has the potential to become a perennial playoff team a lot quicker than the Charlotte Hornets, for example. Or, pick your team that has been bad for 20 years, like we were until the last couple of years. So,
right.
Anyway, so you're at 38. I'm going to take the over on that. I think 38 is a reasonable number as well. Yeah, I guess we'll leave it there. Go Kings.
Go Kings. Let's do it again soon.
Peace.